Okay, so one of the things that I really love about being a writer is the fact that I get to create an independent writing life. So today I wanted to talk about why independence matters more than talent when you're a writer. Why independence matters more than talent for writers. Okay, so here's what I know to be true. There's a lot of talented writers out there in the world who never actually build a real writing life. So, and there are writers who aren't necessarily the most gifted writers, but they do figure out how to build sustainable writing lives. And there is a strong difference between the two. And so the difference isn't talent. It's really this notion of understanding what it means to be an independent writer. So today I just wanted to talk about why independence matters more than talent if you actually want writing to support your life. My name is Helana Black. I am a professional writer and have been so since for the last 10 years. In 2018, I packed up my writing business and moved abroad and have been gallivanting everywhere from Thailand, Rwanda, Turkey, Cambodia, a few other places in between, and now I live here in Mexico. And right now, I am sharing some of what it is that I've learned over the last 10 years of my writing life with you. And today we're talking about what it looks like to be an independent writer. So here are my thoughts on why people often overvalue talent when it comes to being a writer. We're actually taught to believe that if we're talented enough, as a writer, everything else will sort of work itself out, and that's not necessarily true. Um, People who are talented writers often get praised really early as writers, usually in a school setting. So if you know that you were a good writer in school, and I know that I was a pretty good writer in school. I wouldn't say I was among the best, but I felt good about writing when I was in school. um, but people who are praised early in their days for writing feel like they can just sort of sit back and they feel good about being praised for how good their writing is, but they never really learn what it means to be a professional writer and to be able to build a life around it. So yeah, being a good writer in school or using your writing skills for whatever it is that you do in your work. People who are praised early for their work often tend to sit and wait for other people to recognize them because they don't know anything else. It feels good for people to be able to read your stuff and say, oh God, that was such a great article. Good job. Good job. But then you do something other than what lights you up on the inside for work because you've never really learned how to be able to have a writing life that supports your basic needs as an adult. You need to be able to pay rent or your mortgage. You need to be able to buy food. You need to be able to pay for your children if that's, if you have a family. And you just never learn how to do that as a writer. It's absolutely possible, but you got to learn the basics on how to do that. People who are talented often assume that they're often waiting or assuming that someone else will notice their talent eventually. And so, they write stuff and they're just sort of waiting for someone to pat them on the back and just to say, you know what, your writing is so great. We want to be able to publish you, but you're not really putting your writing in spaces to be discovered by anyone. Because you just haven't made any opportunities for that to happen. You actually have to put your writing out there for other people to be able to find you. And really, rather than you want someone special to be able to discover your work. It's not even that you're out there building an audience for yourself. You know what I mean? There's a difference between building an audience and sitting around and waiting for someone to discover you, to put you in front of the audience that you want. So talent sort of creates a false hope, and not necessarily an infrastructure for the writing life that you want to be able to create for yourself. So here's what's important to understand. Talent will never organize your time for you. Talent will never create income for you, at least not by itself. Your writing talent does not teach you how to protect your energy or to create boundaries around your time so that you'll have the time and space to be able to do your writing. And talent doesn't make decisions about your writing life any easier. You've got to learn how to do that on your own. And so this is what I mean when I say that you've got to learn how to be an independent writer over relying on talent only. So what happens when writers are not independent? I have done a lot of these things myself, like relying on jobs that drain creativity. I consider myself to be a teacher. I think I'm a decent teacher. But I care about the outcomes for the students that I work with, and I think that matters. But I think I spent too much time in the wrong space of teaching. I used to teach GED students writing, and I loved that work. When I did the work, I absolutely loved that work. Working with adult students who were learning, writing skills, basic writing skills for themselves, to be able to pass their GED exam, of course, but also to be able to go out into the workforce and to be able to find work that would help them to pay for their lives and help them structure their families. But I think I spent too many years in that space. I should not have spent that long. What I had always wanted was to be able to figure out a way to be able to use my writing skills, to be able to pay for my life. I had done a lot of blogging. I was very early in the blogging space. I was early, probably, when did I start blogging? Around 2003, 2004-ish is when I actually started blogging, which is early in the days of blogging, when people were just out blogging, for fun. And it was, I wouldn't say it was easy to build an audience, but it was just really popular for people to be able to write and to be able to build a niche audience around, whatever it is that you were super passionate about. And it wasn't really about money back then, as it was about just connecting with people who understood what your writing was and why you were doing it. And so I started out writing about what I was doing in education, and that was cool until it wasn't. And then I sort of moved into a space where I wanted to write about my journey in health and well-being. And so I've had issues with uterine fibroids in the past. And so I wanted to be able to learn how to be able to take care of my health so that my uterine fibroids would go away. And I actually built a pretty decent audience around that topic. And I spent a lot of hours writing, blogging about that particular topic, about talking to my doctor and my experience with doctors, which usually was not positive. But just really learning how to be able to take care of myself. And I built an audience around of women from quite literally all over the world. And that was really fun to be able to talk to women. I had women in Kenya, all over the Caribbean, women in India. I think I'd even spoken to a couple of women in Iran. Just really all over. And that was so fun to be able to do that. And to think that I was able to do that with my writing. And then I eventually turned in that work, that writing, into doing other things in writing in the health space. But back to what it is I was actually talking about. When you don't have an independent writing life, you start to rely on jobs that drain your creativity, as opposed to actually being able to have more creativity. So what happens to a lot of people is you get up, you go to your job, whatever it is happens to be, and maybe you like it, but it's not what your hard work is. And so when you leave your hard work till the end of the day, um, you don't have any energy left for it, and you start to resent the job. You start to feel like, well, maybe this thing isn't for me, and it's really not. It's not for you. It's just that you haven't learned how to be able to flip it, how to be able to flip your mindset around so that you can create the writing life that you actually want to have, right? um, Next thing is, people are always waiting for permission to call themselves a writer. My God, if I go on LinkedIn and I see that you have named yourself publicly as an aspiring writer, it makes me want to pull my hair out. It makes me want to pull my hair out. People who write are writers. There's nothing aspiring about you. So you don't have to wait on permission for other people to call you a writer. And especially don't put that on LinkedIn. Like, it's not even a position. So when people put aspiring writer in their bio on LinkedIn, I'm like, oh God, that makes it's like a stab in my heart because I know full well that they have this thing that they want to be able to create, but haven't figured out the structure that they need to be able to get to it. So don't wait on permission. They're feeling anxious about their age, their relevance, or their current technology. As we get older, we often start to feel like, well, maybe I'm too old to be able to indulge myself in this fantasy of becoming a writer. Well, one, being a writer doesn't have to be a fantasy if you know how to be able to be an independent writer who knows how to be able to structure your life so that you can create an income for yourself. Are you relevant? That depends on what it is that you write about, and this is a skill. Finding an audience for the work that you create is a skill in and of itself. So you have to figure out how to be able to do that. That is a skill, being able to be relevant to an audience, a chosen audience, and to be able to find those people out. That's a skill that you have to create. Or using the technology. AI is a big thing. I like to use, well, not that I like to use, but I like to experiment with using AI, and especially in the ideation phase. I don't use it to be able to write the things that I certainly don't use it to write it for the clients that I'm working for. But it does help me with my ideas. So without independence, writers end up negotiating their creativity inside systems that don't Let's try this again. Without independence, writers end up negotiating their creativity inside systems that don't prioritize it. And we've all done this before. We put our jobs over our creativity, and it's not what we want to do. It's possible to live a life where your creativity actually comes first. Go figure. You can live a life where your creativity comes first. So what independence actually means for writers. Independence does not mean doing everything alone. More so, it means choosing the terms under which you work. You get to choose the terms under which you work. So independence looks like deciding how writing actually fits into your life. You can be writing all day if that's what you want to be doing. If you want to write a quarter of the day, like people who are consultants or trainers, writing might only be a part, a quarter of what it is that they do in a day, or even within a year, if you want to think about it that way. And the other time is spent working with their clients, doing speaking presentations and things like that. But then they find opportunities to be able to write the thing that they're actually excited about. So let's say, for example, you're I don't know, you write for a SaaS company, and no, not you write for a SaaS company, but maybe you're a sales consultant and you work with SaaS companies, software as a service. And maybe you love that. Maybe you love working with technology companies. And you don't necessarily need to be writing about tech all the time, but that might be a part of your work in getting getting word about your services or whatever it is that you offer as a sales consultant who works with SaaS companies. The writing might only be 25% of what it is you're doing. So maybe you are writing, you're writing for magazines. Maybe you have, books or ebooks and things that you want to write about. You might be writing emails. You get to decide what it is that you want your writing life to look like. How does the writing fit into your life on a daily basis in a business? Or your writing can look like, you are an author. Maybe you're a therapist and you have books that you want to be able to write based on what it is that you've learned about the clients that you work with. Or maybe you have a very unique way of looking at what it is that you do in your profession, in your work as a therapist. Books are a really great way to be able to do that. One of my favorite people, what is her name? I want to say her name is Nidra Tawwab. She's a sister who is a therapist, and she has like 3, 4, maybe even 5 books out. I think her name is Nidra Tawwab. Correct me if I'm wrong. But she has several books, 1 to 3, maybe even 5 books, where she talks about things like boundaries and communicating with family about your boundaries and things like that. She's a genius woman, genius therapist, and she uses her books to be as a way to be able to spread her message. Maybe that's more of what it is that you would like to be able to do. You get to choose what skills you want to learn. When people ask me how it is that I learned how to have a writing business, really I've learned one skill at a time. And it's taken me a lot of time to be able to do it. It's not like I took a class. I didn't take a class in learning how to have a writing business or figure out what type of a writing life I actually wanted to have. This is something that I sort of learned bit by bit. And so when I actually started my writing business, I started out writing educational content for other companies. Started off with small businesses. I pretty much figured out pretty fast that working with small businesses was not what I wanted to do, often because they play with your money too much. But working with larger companies started to become a much stronger form of income for me. And it actually helped me when I moved overseas. I moved to Thailand and did a lot of health work. I can talk about all of that stuff in a different video at another time. But because I had steady clients where I was working, and I knew what I had to write. I was writing blog posts for the most part, blog posts, ebooks. I even did a few white papers for companies. But because I understood what was involved in writing that work, I had very structured. I had 4 or 5 hours to be able to devote to that during any given work day, and that left me a lot of space and time to be able to focus on myself. I had never had that before living in the United States, and so when I lived to Thailand, because the cost of living was so low, it gave me a lot of time to be able to do my writing work, get paid, and still have space to be able to focus on myself, where I was able to get my clarity back, to be able to get my creativity back, to get my health back. Wound up losing about 100 pounds during that time, during a course of many months, of course, but overall over the years I've lost about 100 pounds in doing that. And so now I have space to not just work with clients, but I also have space to do creative work that I've always wanted to do as well. So I get to choose what skills I get to learn when it is that because I'm an independent writer. I get to decide how my work circulates around the world. So a lot of people like to think that the only way that they can get their book to circulate is if they write a book. And I've written books. I've actually written books for myself, and I've written a ton, I won't say a ton, but I've written a lot of books for other people. Short books, full-size books. I've written cookbooks. I've actually done a lot of work with just doing recipe development and writing cookbooks for other people. I've probably written about 30 cookbooks at this point, short cookbooks in the health space, and helping people to, just as a ghostwriter. I wasn't really all that interested in putting my name on anything. I just wanted to be paid for the work, and I was excited to do it because I actually really love cooking. And at some point, I'm going to have time and space to be able to put my own cookbooks together for myself as part of my own personal expression, and to be able to create an audience around, create an audience around people who actually want to be able to engage with my cookbooks. So when you're an independent writer, I get to be able to do that. I get to decide how my work circulates. So at this point, I have several ways. I have an email list that I communicate on, where I get to talk about writing books and pitching magazines. That's one place where I get to write. And then I have my Substack, and that is a newsletter service where it's called Wealthy, Wise, and Whole. Wealthy, Wise, and Whole on Substack. If you're interested, you can check me out over there. And there is where I use the platform to be able to talk about supporting women who want to be able to find their creativity in midlife again. Because that topic is super important to me, and that's where my cookbook stuff is going to be able to fit at some point. I'm, still working out the kinks as far as what the, as far as what it is that I'm going to be writing about on a regular basis. But I actually love Substack. If you're not familiar with Substack, Substack is a really great place for you to be able to write. And then I have a few other places, and of course, pitching magazines is where I also am able to lend my services as a writer, where I get to share a bit about my own personal story, sharing it in stories that go into, national and international circulation around the world. And so that's cool to be able to do that as an independent writer. And I get paid for all of these things. You get to decide what sorts of tools you want to be able to use. If you want to be able to use AI, you can do that. If you don't want to use AI, you can choose that too. I know people who actually, are on both sides. Some people absolutely refuse to use AIs, and they're doing great. And then there are others who do use AI, and they're doing wonderful as independent writers. And so as an independent writer, what you actually get to do is you get to build options for yourself instead of sitting around and waiting for other people to discover your work or to tell you that your work is good enough to be able to put out now. Independence lets writers stop asking for permission and start making decisions that actually build your writer life. So why does independence change everything? Independence actually helps to reduce anxiety about what it is that you're trying to build. Independence is a mindset. It's such a different space from, and this is, I don't like disrespecting people who get up every day and go to work, and have other people, create, have going to work and participating in building something that the world actually needs. But when you decide that you actually want to create a business that serves your creativity, that something that is an expression of your creativity, and put that out into the world, God, that takes so much. It takes so much bravery. And when you're able to do that, when you're busy making big decisions about your own independent writing life, it actually reduces a lot of anxiety that you have about where to put your ideas and where it's supposed to go, because you're busy building it. Independence helps you clarify your next steps. When you're an independent writer, remember, independence is a mindset. You're always thinking about what it is that I am creating now, and what I'm creating now, what is that moving me towards? So the next steps are always appearing as you go. Independence makes structure possible. When you're an independent thinker, when you're an independent creator, when you're an independent writer, you need to be able to have that structure there in order to be able to create the thing that you want to be able to build. Independence makes pitching feel more practical and less scary. Because when you're independent, you are absolutely adamant about the ideas that you want to be able to put into the world. And so it's less scary to be able to do it. You're actually offering people a service, as opposed to believing that you're just bothering them with ideas that they don't need. And your independence as a writer turns your writing life into an actual practice. It's something that you do on a day-to-day basis, and this is your devoted writing time. And so once writers claim independence, your talent finally has some place to land. I want to make sure that makes sense, that once writers claim their independence, your talent has somewhere to land. So before, if you were just, that you're a talented writer, right? But you're not using your talent in service to anything in particular. Once you decide that you are an independent writer and that's what you want to do, that's what you want to be, and you start building the structure around it, now you can use your talent in service to your own independence. And so really that's what I wanted to talk about today. So if you actually want to see how independent writers actually circulate their work around the world, I am sharing some of my own pitches. I'm sharing my 5 successful magazine pitches, including the exact pitch and the published article. So I give you, my pitches tend to be quite short, just a couple of paragraphs long. That's really all you need to have in order to pitch. Just a couple of paragraphs long, but there's a formula that I use to be able to create good pitches. And so I share that with you in my 5 successful magazine pitches. And so I'll give you the pitch as well as the actual link to seeing online what that pitch actually turned into, the actual article once it was published. And I give that away for free. It's a free download. So you can go to the description box, click on the link, and get that for yourself. So if writing has ever felt frustrating, or it felt stalled, it's absolutely worth asking whether the issue is really your talent, or whether it's time to claim more independence around your work. So yeah, I'll end it there. If you want more, I invite you to like this video and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button so that every time I put out a new video, you'll get an update. Like, subscribe, share, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Peace.